So, Ubisoft might not be releasing a major Assassin's Creed title this year. This of course has not been confirmed yet, and we won't know until the company makes an official statement. However, it looks like someone might at least be thinking about it. Now, believe it or not, there are people who don't think there's anything wrong with the franchise. However, if you've been following the sales and general buzz, it appears to be losing more and more of its core fan base, with each subsequent release. This might not add up if you look at it from a production perspective, as the games have gotten bigger, the graphics and animations better, and the locations much more detailed and rich in design. I should personally mention that I don't believe there has ever really been a bad Assassin's Creed game. With the exception of Unity's bugs, the worst crimes these games have committed are mostly being mediocre or not interesting enough. And even though the gameplay might be recycled now, it's not bad per se, and that formula, generic or not, is more than enough to carry multiple franchises on its shoulders. Today I'd like to talk about what I believe is one of the main causes of Assassin's Creed's fan fatigue. As someone that's played all the main and minor releases of the franchise except Syndicate, I believe it's the simplification of the story and the reactive gameplay design approach from Ubisoft that's mainly to blame for the series' decline in popularity. I've been into Assassin's Creed for the last 5 years, having picked interest in the series a few years late, and during that time, my relationship with the men and women in hoods has greatly varied. There was a time when I felt really smart for coming up with a theory for something that happened in an Assassin's Creed game, or discovering one of the secrets in the game. I'd go online and look at the various theories that other players had come up with, and it felt pretty cool. Assassin's Creed seemed like a game that most players could enjoy, but if you took the extra look beneath the surface, you could get so much more out of it in terms of discovering its fictional, historical conspiracies, the lore, and of course the pieces of Eden and the mysterious precursor race. Yes, the game had great gameplay and large impressive locations, however to players like me it had so much more. So to explain this, I'm breaking down my relationship with the game into sections. When I first decided to check out the game with a guy in a white hood, I was mostly drawn in by the cool sounding name and the fact that the game was now at its third entry, Brotherhood. I feared that if I didn't check it out now, I might miss out on an awesome franchise. The first game was pretty linear and a lot more simplistic than its later brothers, but for me, it might have been the best in terms of focus. Throughout Assassin's Creed 1, you were tasked with taking out 9 Templars. Each of these men was given a short backstory, and the reasons for why they needed to be eliminated were clearly explained. I was interested not just in the world but in these two opposing factions and what their fight was all about. Furthermore, the game introduced me to Desmond, a modern day assassin dealing with another story of his own. As the game progressed, elements of sci-fi began to creep in, culminating in an ending that raised so many questions. What happened to the modern assassins? What's with the pieces of Eden? How many key figures in history were involved in this? Etc. etc. Altair's personal story was complete, at least for the time, but Desmond's was just getting started. I was strapped in at this point and ready to see the story through to its end. Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood are what I call the best days of the franchise. It's within these two games that I think Assassin's Creed mastered its formula. The character of Ezio was freaking awesome. The story was personal and showed a lot of his growth from being a brash young man into a great leader. The setting was also much better, and to me, it perfected its open world routine within these games. From a technical story and gameplay perspective, these did really well. However, this wasn't all. During this time, the story with Desmond and his search for the precursor race was really developed. Unlockable sequences such as the Garden of Eden fleshed out the fictional world and gave conspiracy theories about religion, the creation of man, and politics as well. These were things you didn't have to discover to have the game play out from beginning to end. However, they were so satisfying to acquire and to delve in, allowing players and fans to try and guess what all this was about and where the story might go next. Assassin's Creed Revelations is what I look at as the climax to my original relationship with the game. At this point, there was barely any development in terms of gameplay, many of the new features weren't welcomed with open arms, and the annual release schedule had begun to show some impact on the game's creativity. However, from a story perspective, everything came full circle around this point. We got to not only conclude Altair's story, but we concluded Ezio's assassin's journey as well. After many years as the centerpieces to the story, it was finally time for the franchise to let these characters go. The moment at the end when the fates of the two master assassins are revealed and tie into those of Desmond is a powerful one. For me, the speech that Ezio gives to Desmond at the end is sealed as my greatest Assassin's Creed moment. Finally, Desmond had the knowledge, the skill, and even the team to help him complete his journey and end his own story. So what happens? Does he use this to wrap up this amazing story? Does the final revelation of everything that's been happening lead to an amazing conclusion? Nope. Instead, we got another game. Look, I like Assassin's Creed 3, okay? The balance of open frontier sections with those filled with buildings was pretty cool. The music was the best in the series, don't kill me. And unlike many, I actually liked Connor's character. Yes, he was far more boring than Ezio, but that's fine. I don't want all the assassins to be based off the same character model. At least he was memorable. Like many other people, my favorite part of this game was Haytham Kenway. However, I consider this game to be the biggest mistake in the franchise for a number of reasons. The gameplay itself is the usual, the environment was interesting, and the characters weren't too bad. Never Combat was also a welcome entry. However, this game was heavily affected by the annual release schedule at this point. Towards the end of the game, for those paying close attention, the game had to wrap itself up pretty quickly. There appear to have been entire sections of the game that were removed in order for it to end. At one point, Connor mentions a few guards he must sneak by, and then the screen fades to black and that entire section is skipped. Charles Lee threatens he threatens Connor and his people in one of their final meetups in what seems to be something that's going to start up an entire, adventure with the natives as well. But then the game jarringly leads to a disappointing chase sequence and the game ends shortly afterwards. Worse still is Desmond's side of the story. This is the time when I believe most people got absolutely sick of the modern day assassin story. And I don't blame them. The entirety of the modern day section in this game involves Desmond getting some keys, opening a door, and making a decision. This didn't require a whole other game. In my opinion, everything Desmond does in Assassin's Creed 3 should have and could have been the final sections of Assassin's Creed Revelations. Assassin's Creed 3 should have been an entirely new chapter in the modern day story. Instead, the game received some backlash and didn't quite become the masterpiece it was supposed to be. This led to the greatest mistake of all, the creators trying to fix the problem. The next few games to follow to me have looked like the result of the fallout from Assassin's Creed 3. Some of the game's elements appear to be slaves to the yearly release schedule and a lost battle to not piss off the longtime fans. A few examples of this: many of the lead characters, Edward, Arno, Shay Patrick, Cormac, they all act like knockoffs of the young Ezio character. They are the overconfident, charming lead that discovers something bigger than himself, and then the generic plot ensues. The dialogue that used to happen as the assassins killed Templars and they gave them their last words, it's become all but meaningless in the later games, but nope, the team has to keep these in because they've always been in. The greatest victim of this fallout to me has been the modern day story. This has been all but abandoned. The player character went from being a defined descendant of the historical characters with his own personality and objectives to a nameless, faceless, voiceless, first-person view character that simply does whatever he or she is told by various NPCs with no reaction whatsoever. Further still, the time allocated to the story and its overall objective has been greatly reduced. Where the game used to end with Desmond's final actions in the game, it now ends with the historical assassin instead. The secrets available in the game are also much less and far less interesting than they used to be. The creators seem to be stuck in an endless cycle of trying to please the fans. People liked the ships in Assassin's Creed 3, so Assassin's Creed 4 had a huge focus on ships, but then it didn't feel much like Assassin's Creed, so back to Paris. Oh, then co-op was popular around the time, so Assassin's Creed Unity got co-op, but it wasn't very good, so Assassin's Creed Syndicate has none. Also, they didn't have female character models and people got mad, so now Assassin's Creed Syndicate has one of the leads as a female, and she's the cool one too. Look, some people complained about climbing, so now you can grapple to the top of buildings. None of this is a bad idea in itself. For me, the issue is most of these moves feel reactive rather than creative, and it's this very concept that I titled this video after. This is what I think went wrong with the series. Rather than create a great adventure and characters, the focus seems to have shifted to pleasing the complaining fanbase. The result is these repetitive cookie-cutter side quests, simple stories that play it safe, and the use of the tried and true mechanics that have always been accepted by the player base. Now, having said all that, I am a fan of the series, and I do see moments when the original genius the series had shines through. Characters like Haytham Ken were still interesting and unique, the ship mechanics for Assassin's Creed 4 were impressive. Things like that made me feel like the series might still have a few great ideas in store for us. A few of the last games have been a chore, played through more out of obligation than enjoyment, but looking at the reviews being received by Syndicate, I hope to enjoy it as much as others did when I do finally get around to it. There are already aspects to the game that I think are promising, like Evie's character seems different from the young Ezio knockoff template, and although that might be covered by her brother, it's still something. I also like the trailer that showed a specific list of Templars for the game. This looks to take inspiration from the original game that had a specific set of enemies, and everything that happened in the game served to advance the story. I look forward to seeing what the series has to offer, but if I can hope for one thing, it's for the creators to stop trying to please everyone and get back to creating the game that they want to create. I hope the series regains its focus, something I feel they lost somewhere around Assassin's Creed 3. Whichever way the series takes us next, it'll be interesting to see, but if a year of rest is what it needs, then so be it. Personally, I think Ubisoft should just scrap the current modern day story for a new one that is just as complex as the one we already had. Most, or at least many of the fans of Assassin's Creed story did not get on board for simple self-contained adventure stories. They loved and embraced the complex stories, secrets, conspiracies, hidden messages, and the convoluted lore. But that was before SC3 ruined it anyway. Right now, the game feels like a soulless imitator that's simply wearing the Assassin's Creed franchise's skin in order to keep the machine running. And as I said, none of the games are particularly bad. I just wish they revived the soul of this once great franchise. Now honestly, I can talk Assassin's Creed forever, so I'll just leave it here. Thanks for watching. If you have your own opinion on this issue or ideas for future topics, you're always welcome to share. Till next time.